just before we get started, just like to let everyone know we will be hosting, as part of the federal election campaign, candidate forums for each of the 4 ridings that our chamber has in its geographic territory. So we'll be having candidate sessions for Kitchener-Conestoga, Kitchener South Hespeler, Kitchener Center, and the Waterloo riding. So stay tuned for that. Those will be virtual events that will be set up over the next week or so, probably for the second week in September. You can look for those, but stay tuned. We'll be updating those on social media, in e-news, and in our communications with members and the public. As a reminder, our chamber, in cooperation and collaboration with the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, has a variety of tools for all businesses as we navigate through COVID. And if you go to chambercheck.ca, you'll find a lot of tools available to keep you, your business, your staff, and your customers safe. Everything from free medical grade masks from Eclipse Automation to free screening kits for rapid screening kits, as well as we'll be having we're working on a variety of new certification and training to keep your business safe. And just as the last thing, as I see Ms. Paul has joined us, thank you, is that we are working on, along with the Canada's Innovation Corridor Business Council, which are the chambers of commerce from right from the east of GTA right through to Waterloo region, on a vaccine verification application so that businesses can stay open and reopen safely for both themselves and for their customers. So there's lots on the go. And without further ado, I do want to thank you, everyone, for joining us. Before we get started, I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsors and partners. These events don't happen without the continued support of our partners and sponsors. And so to our title sponsor, Chris Donnelly and Mike Dowdy, and the folks from Manulife are always great supporters, especially on public policy matters. And our bronze sponsor today is CLAC. And thanks to Ian Dewar and his gang for supporting this and making this event possible. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. I'll try and get to those. We have a limited time, but I wanted to if there's any there, I'll try and squeeze them in. I now have the honor of introducing the leader of the Green Party of Canada, Annamie Paul. Annamie was engaged with public policy from an early age and went on to complete a Master's of Public Affairs at Princeton University, a Bachelor of Laws at the University of Ottawa, and was called to the bar in the province of Ontario. She has been selected as an inaugural Action Canada Fellow, an Echoing Green Fellow, and as a member of the Recruitment of Policy Leaders Program, a member of the University of Ottawa Common Law Honor Society, and a recipient of the Harry Jerome Award. So she's not leaving much time for anything else. Promoting diversity in Canadian politics is a long-standing commitment of Annamie's. After graduate school, she founded and directed the Canadian Centre for Political Leadership, a nonpartisan charity that trained women and underrepresented minorities to run for elected office. In the 2019 federal election, she represented the Green Party of Canada as the candidate in Toronto Centre, the second best result in the GTA, raising the Green vote significantly in Toronto Centre, Rosedale. Madam Paul will be doing some opening remarks for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll be doing a little bit of a fireside chat. I know you've got limited time. Thank you. It's been I know what it's like to be on an election campaign and a leaders tour, so thank you for making time for us today. But without further ado, welcome. Thank you for making the time. I'll give you the floor to make some opening remarks, and then I've got some questions that we can try and make our way through. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm here in Toronto on the traditional territories of the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. And yes, you're absolutely right. I raced home. We moved our press conference by an hour so that we wouldn't be bumping up against other leaders. And so, of course, I raced home. I didn't want to miss this at all. And thank you for your patience in waiting for me to join you. And I will keep my remarks very brief so that we can move to the most interesting part, which is the fireside and the questions. Just to say that, the big thing right now, of course, the elephant in the room is that we're in an election. I do not think that we should be in an election. Those of you who heard my opening remarks at the start of the campaign and subsequent, including today, have heard me just pose the question, why are we here when there are 2 years left in the mandate and so much left to do and so much going on that's preoccupying people across Canada? And frankly, even if you're not preoccupied, I mean, maybe you just want to have a nice summer for the first time in a while. That's a legitimate reason too. So we are nevertheless in an election, and I think that since it's the opportunity for the people of Canada to try to make sure that we send I was going to say deputies, but that's French. We send MPs back from our communities that are committed to getting to work and getting things done. And that means sending people back, in my view, that are willing to work together, that are willing to acknowledge when another party has a good idea, because not any one party has all the good ideas, and recognizes that what the people of Canada want most from us is to deliver on the things that we all believe would help us to be better off should a pandemic hit again, help us to be better off in terms of tackling the climate emergency, help our society to be more cohesive, help people to be able to live lives of dignity from start to finish. And that is going to require a culture change. And so more and more, I'm thinking that this election is really about that, about voting for people that are committed to a more positive, collaborative, less partisan approach to politics in the next parliament. What we're talking about in terms of issues that we want people to try to focus as much as they can their minds on during this election. First, wherever you are in this country, you have certainly been touched by the climate emergency. This summer in particular has been one where people have seen really up close and personal what climate change can do in very devastating ways, whether it's the thousands of people who are under evacuation orders in their communities out in BC, or the prairie farmers who are seeing their livestock die and their crops wither because of the worst drought that they have ever experienced, certainly in our lifetime in any case, or because it's or because of the things that we see in this part of the world, just in terms of flooding and our own forest fires and the poor air quality and so forth. So we know from the most recent report of the UN that some of these changes are here and they're here to stay for a very long time, but it could get worse. And so the question is, how much worse do we want it to get before we do the things that we need to do? And I say, and I believe a lot of people in Canada are ready to say, we don't want it to get any worse than this. This is already bad enough. And that's going to mean accelerating our move towards a net zero economy. That means an economy where whatever greenhouse gases we put out there, we're balancing it out elsewhere. And this is the good news, and you don't always get good news when you're in a crisis. But the good news is that the green economy around the world has been absolutely embraced by all of the major economies as the greatest economic opportunity of our lifetime, and certainly one of the key drivers to help major economies exit from the doldrums of the pandemic. It's something that creates jobs in the short term. It's something that creates jobs in the long term. And any country that is hoping to have a competitive, modern economy is going to be investing heavily in this period in green infrastructure, in green technology. Canada has the chance to be a world leader in that. As we tackle the climate crisis and become a global leader in creating a competitive green economy, we also need to make sure that we're leaving no one behind and that everyone can live with dignity. I believe everyone has a story as well about a loved one or a friend or a colleague who was thrown into desperate straits during this pandemic, whether because they lost their job or they were at risk of eviction or perhaps you had a loved one who lived in long-term care who was, not treated well at all, or in my case, lost someone in long-term care during the pandemic. We have seen that we're not doing enough to make sure that every person in Canada can have access to that life of dignity. And so this is the time to complete our social safety net and to remember what we used to know, which is that when we invest in ourselves, when we invest in the future of people in Canada, it is the best investment we can make in our collective prosperity. That these programs, whether it's Medicare or a Canada Pension Plan or universal pharmacare, these things pay for themselves through greater productivity, greater quality of life, making our country more attractive to investment. And so we need to remember that and reinvest in those things. Those are two of the big themes for us in the election. The third one, as I said, being let's change the culture so that we can get some things done for a change, which would be refreshing for us all. And, the Green Party has great candidates in every community, including your communities. I hope that you'll take a look at them and find someone there that is very passionate about the needs of the people who they're seeking to represent. Someone who certainly has proven their dedication to the community and that is ready to be a strong voice on behalf of the people who elect them in terms of pushing forward the policy issues and the values that matter most to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And there's lots to get to. I know we've got limited time, so I'm going to try and group some together in themes. And we're still in, as you rightfully point out, in the grip, unfortunately, of a fourth wave. Over the past 18 months, our chamber and chambers across the country have been advocating for, financial assistance programs for, in particular, small and medium-sized business that have been so badly hurt. Where does the Green Party stand on those supports for businesses as we're in the pandemic, and then how do you transition out? I mean, those are some of the things that are on offer in this. I would agree with you, unnecessary federal election, but if we're into one, what's your position on support now as we're in the pandemic and then as we transition out?
Well, first, everyone, all of your members should know that there are so many small business owners in the Green Party. Many of our members are small business owners themselves, self-employed people. And so we've always had a focus on supports to the small business community. And then also we pride ourselves in having some good common sense, at least I do. And certainly given that small businesses are the economic engine for Canada, given that most jobs come out of the small business sector, we want to make sure that particularly at this time, it's supported in all the ways that it should be. So we have been very supportive of the wage subsidies that were provided to small businesses, the rental subsidies that were provided to small businesses. One of our concerns at the moment is whether those supports are going to last long enough to see us through. One of our concerns is that they're going to be ended prematurely while they are still needed. And so we want to see those subsidies, those supports continuing for as long as the pandemic does and until we have established a certain metrics of economic health before moving on. The other thing that we are preoccupied with, and I know that I hope that all parties are giving it thought, is with respect to the labor shortages that we have now. We know that a lot of small businesses are struggling to try to identify workers to come back. And I know that there are those that will say that the temporary benefits that have been provided, like the CRB, have been a disincentive, but one might say that we maybe need to revisit how much people are being paid and what kind of supports workers have, because $2,000 a month is not a lot of money in a lot of parts of the country. And if that's enough to keep people out of the workforce, then we have to ask ourselves why. So we are going to be supporting anything that helps businesses get fully back on their feet before they're withdrawn, and we expect that would be at least until the beginning of next year.
Okay, now I guess this is one of the questions that the Green Party would often get asked, is the connection between the environment and economic policy. And I think specifically a couple of ones is, in this region, as you know, innovators and there are folks in the green economy. You know, how would you describe the climate economy and the opportunity for, in particular, Southwestern Ontario, from here to Toronto? You know, what are you going to do to? What does the Green Party's philosophy around making sure the conditions are right for the emerging new economy, which is knowledge based? It's building on technology. So I find that it's really helping us understand the connection between green policy and that economic policy.
Absolutely. Well, those two things really go hand in hand. As I said, this is undoubtedly the greatest economic opportunity that Canada has had, certainly within our lifetimes. And you have people like Mark Carney and you know, several Nobel Prize economists, and of course some of the multilateral agencies saying that this is the greatest economic opportunity since the Industrial Revolution. You know, this is something where you're talking about a major transformation of almost every aspect of society. And so, of course, there's going to be a great deal of opportunity there as we move away from generations of fossil fuel energy towards renewable energies. And the countries that are most able to invest in that upfront, to invest in innovation, to invest in small businesses upfront as they seek to develop their own green enterprises, the better off we're going to be. There's going to be work in doing things like ensuring that we move away from the combustion engine. There's going to be work in creating a national zero emissions vehicle charging station network. There's going to be work in helping us get to 100% renewable energy on our electricity grid. We're at 80% now, so we're actually a leader in that area. There's going to be work in creating a coast-to-coast-to-coast national renewable energy electricity grid. There's going to be work in retrofitting buildings as well. There's going to be work in decarbonizing industry. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of work to be had. And one of the main things we need to remember is that much of the innovation that's going to get us to net zero or even to net negative, which means even taking carbon out of the atmosphere, hasn't been created yet. And so we need to see direct federal funding for private and student-led business research and development. We want to see a strengthening of Canada's venture capital system. We want there to ensure that there are supports for small businesses that need investment so that they're not selling off their innovations and technologies too soon. There was a fantastic report done by the House of Commons on intellectual property and technology, and we want to see the full implementation of that. So we've been thinking about this a lot because Canada, unfortunately, other than Italy in the G7, we invest the least in research and development. And this is really a race for research and development. So every region of Canada can benefit. Every region, including the Kitchener-Waterloo area, who is really poised to be a global leader in innovation in green technology, needs the support. And if they have it, they absolutely are poised for Canada to take a significant share of the global market in the green sector and green technology.
So one of the things, and you know, whether we think of traditional larger businesses like Manulife as an example, because they acutely, for large business, understand the cost of the climate issue, whether it's in premiums they have to charge or paying out across the board in a number of different ways. So I think large businesses trying to lead on getting to that green economy. Some of the struggle that you've hit on is small business are the least prepared and have the least resources to make that transition. try and connect those dots and saying what you're trying to change has a real impact on small businesses who don't have the deep pockets to necessarily make that transition. What's the approach the Green Party is going to put on offer for small and medium-sized business?
Yes, well, so yes, you're right. I touched on some of those things before. I mean, again, we have to remember that we're still in the pandemic, and so making sure that the small businesses first that exist can survive long enough to actually work in this area and get to the next phase is important. And so extending wage and rent subsidies until the restrictions are fully lifted and the economy is back on its feet is really important. We also propose establishing a federally funded green venture capital fund. And the intention there is to support those viable small local green business startups. You're absolutely right. Not everyone knows how to connect with a venture capitalist. Not everyone has access to the capital that they need in the private market in order to get really viable, innovative ideas off the ground. And so a federally funded green venture capital fund would be part of the solution. We also want to make sure that small and medium enterprises that we subsidize the implementation of these new technologies. Getting from the idea to through those first few years of trying it out and implementing them and putting them out to the market are very tricky, and it's usually the place where Canadian businesses unfortunately end up selling off their technology and innovation because they just don't have the capital to go any further. So subsidizing that would be important. And then I don't have to tell your members probably about the paperwork and the administrative burden that small businesses have when they're trying to, again, get their businesses to the next level or even started in the first place. And given the pace at which we want to move when it comes to green technology and how quickly our competitors are moving, we want to make sure that that is streamlined, that we reduce the bureaucracy, that we get approvals for small and medium enterprises more quickly so that their technologies can get to market more quickly. And then, of course, training and mentorship for underrepresented groups and for those who have ideas but really need that kind of entrepreneurial training and business support is also going to be part of it. If that sounds very detailed, and I could go on, Ian, I can tell you right now, it's because we have people on both sides. We have people who are directors at the National Research Council. We also have people who have solar businesses, wind technology businesses. We have people who are involved in research on carbon capture and also launching businesses in that area. So we hear from both sides about how important it is to create space and support for innovation for small businesses, particularly those that are seeking to, make a stake and make a claim in the green economy.
Listen, time's running short, and I'm going to ask you in our rapid fire round 3 really complex questions. But if we can keep it to maybe I'm going to steal about 10 more minutes of your time and then let you go.
Okay.
Healthcare is obviously in the middle of this pandemic is a big issue. A lot of it's provincially, obviously, in terms of the delivery of healthcare, but the federal government obviously has a role to play in terms of funding and the role that it plays in national standards, etc. Maybe talk a little bit about the importance of healthcare and what the green plan is for having a healthcare system that works for every Canadian from coast to coast to coast.
I would say that the pandemic has made it clear to people coast to coast to coast that there's some significant and serious work to be done. There are areas of our healthcare system that don't have any supports. I mean, not any supports at all. I'm sorry, my Skype rang. There are areas that clearly have been underfunded and underinvested in for a very long time, and we have seen how difficult that has made things for many people in Canada during the pandemic. Mental health is one example. Long-term care is another. We know that we have an aging population, and we haven't seriously considered for a long time how we are going to modernize our system so that people can better age in place, and so that people have the supports they need at every stage of life. And so that is another area that that we need to see investment in. What we need to have post-pandemic is a full review of how our, where the gaps and weaknesses were in our healthcare system, where they were revealed, and how the federal government will work with the provinces in order to do a proper full review and update and have a modern healthcare strategy for the next 10, 20, 30 years here in Canada. It has been very devastating to see the losses, particularly in long-term care. And we know that we're facing a mental health crisis. And so having that mental health strategy, having a long-term care strategy that is negotiated with the provinces should be top of the agenda for the federal government, and should be a condition of additional transfer payments to the provincial governments as well.
Again, for small businesses, when they hear all the promises in election campaigns, even if they agree with some of them, they see dollar signs attached to them, and generally would say, what does that mean for business taxes and my personal taxes? How do we square the circle of saying the needed investments that you rightfully point out, and I think every party is talking about investments in one way, shape, or form, versus the how do we pay the bill at the end of this? And I'm not, so I guess that's the question that business will have for every party is how do we square that circle of investing where we need to, especially during a pandemic, and how do we get back? Because huge deficits as far as the eye can see is unsustainable. We all know that.
We sure do. And just maybe to take that point first, I would say that we need to be making investments now that give us the greatest chance of securing our future prosperity, exactly so we can pay that money back. And that's really what this is about. We always need to be looking ahead. Where are the next opportunities? Where are the possible areas for growth in our economy? And that is, again, where the green economy comes in. This is why the European Union, which is a union of 27 countries in Europe, many of them are part of the G7, they are investing a third of their long-term budget into the green sector, into investments in green technology and green enterprise, et cetera, exactly because they have decided, and I believe President Biden has decided again in the United States, that clearly that is where future prosperity lies, and that is their best route to paying down the massive debt that they have also accumulated in the States and in Europe. And so for us, when we're talking about this, we have the great news that it is something that is going to allow us to secure our planet's future, which we must do by preventing even worse and more intense and more frequent climate events and weather events, while at the same time creating our future prosperity. And so this is why we're so eager to see the next parliament focus on this area, as opposed to investing in areas which we know are in decline, which we know most likely will not be able to generate the revenue we need in order to fund services into the future. And coming back to my first point, Ian, we have always known that investing in ourselves is the best investment that we can make in order to secure our future prosperity. If people are well educated, if people have good health care, if people have access, to the services that they need, as I said, to live that life of dignity, then they are more productive. Then we are able to innovate. Then we are able to create. We need to make those investments now if we want to be able to have the skilled, modern workforce of the future that's going to be able to capitalize on the green economy of the future. So we need to do that work, and it's going to pay off.
All right, last question, and then we'll let you get on your way to the probably more important things of trying to get votes in your riding. But I think about the new parliament. We've had a minority parliament. We're going to have an election. If, many observers would expect we would have another minority parliament, and who leads that is anybody's guess. Making a people will talk as the election goes on about coalitions and who's going to work with who. What's your philosophy to make parliament work? Because another election, if we're in another minority parliament, is not viable. I think of things like you talked about healthcare. I think every party is in one way, shape, or form publicly funded, publicly accessible. But what are the pieces around how you do innovation? And I think that's or do things differently. Whether it's remote care or online telehealth, etc. There's lots of ways. So everyone's talking about in large measure some of those issues, which, the healthcare industry, the insurance industry has been talking about for years. But I think about, when we get whatever the results are on September 20th, what's your philosophy as the leader of the party going to be to make Parliament work and make change that works for people?
I mentioned a bit of that at the beginning. We really do need a culture shift. I was really lucky, and when I was a little kid, I was 12 years old, I was able to work for a month or two as a page in the Ontario legislature. I was really fortunate in university to be able to work while I was a student as a page in the Senate. And then I worked in my early 20s as an intern in the Ontario legislature for different parties, not just one party. It was a nonpartisan internship. And I saw what government could do. I saw what parties could do when they cooperated. I'm old enough to remember how some of the most extraordinary things we've been able to accomplish here in Canada in terms of good public policy, they were done by minority parliaments where parties were working together, or they were done by one party introducing something and then another party voting for it. Our Medicare is the classic example of that. It was developed by a liberal government during their years, and then it was a conservative government that introduced it to Parliament, and then it was unanimously passed by all parties. So we need to get back to that search for common ground on the issues that matter most. Committees in Parliament actually need to be working committees where people from different parties who have expertise can sit and can thrash out the best policy solutions possible. But what that's going to take is an understanding that not one party has every good idea. You can give credit to someone else without it somehow being a betrayal of your own party, and that we're ultimately there to serve the people of Canada. And that's going to require a certain amount of collaboration and cooperation. If we go back to Parliament again with the same amount of partisanship, with the refusal to acknowledge the contributions of others, then I'm afraid that these big things that we need to do, we're not going to get done. We all got through this pandemic together. It was a minority parliament. It wasn't the Liberal Party alone that passed all of these great benefits and subsidies and things that prevented the worst. So let's remember that, and let's see what we can do together.
Listen, thanks so much for taking the time for our listeners and for those that will join and listen into this after the fact. And this is a little public service announcement. You can hear more from Annamie Paul on Business to Business on 570 News at noon on Sunday as you join Greg and I for a conversation. So we'll look forward to that. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have. Thank you, Madame Paul, for your time. Thank you again to our sponsors at Manulife and CLAC for your continued support of not only the business community, but the chamber and the advocacy and public policy work that we do. And now I'd invite all of our attendees to make your way to the sessions area for group networking, or the networking area for the platform of this platform for one-on-one conversations. Thank you so much, and everyone have a wonderful day. Thanks, madam.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.